That drives me nuts.
Call to order the Board of Aldermen meeting for December 17th, 2018. If you'd all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a roll call, please.
Mayor Thornton,
I'm here.
Alderman Dimmitt,
Here.
Alderman Kramer, Alderman Leahy, Alderman Lockmiller,
Here.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Here.
Alderman Plufka,
Here.
Alderwoman Sims,
Here.
and Alderman Weggie.
It's my understanding Alderman Weggie will be joining us, and so you'll just want to note the time when he comes in. Okay, so item number 4 on tonight's agenda is the approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Oh, wow, 3 of them. Alderman Dimmitt, why don't we start with you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would request permission to remove from the consent agenda items 10G and 10J.
Wait a minute, I thought you were going to ask me to remove Alderman Plufka, so that's the wrong G. Let's go down to this one. Yeah, got it, okay. G and, I'm sorry, J?
G and J.
All right. Tell you what, why don't I ask the other two what their changes are, and if they're consistent with yours, perhaps we can do this all at once? Sure. Yeah, good. Andy?
I had G.
Okay, so E, F, G, and J have been requested to be removed from the consent agenda. And Alderman Plufka, do you have one to add to that?
I do, 10H.
H. E, F, G, H, and J. Have I got them all?
The consent agenda.
Yeah, we'll just do it with the consent agenda. All right, very good. Is there any objection to that? I don't certainly have any objection to it. Very good. We'll move those to under new business and, we'll just take them up at the end of new business. Alderman Leahy, you have something else?
There is an action on the consent agenda, and it is, give me a second, I wrote it down. Is it 1 to H? We just pulled that from the range. Okay.
We did, correct. Yep.
Good, we'll have discussion at that time then.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right.
That works.
Any other changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, is there any objection to approval of acclamation? Seeing none, it will be so approved. We will have item number 5 on the agenda tonight. We have a presentation from the Brentwood Century Foundation, and I see Dan Fitzgerald in the audience. I've been told that he will do the speaking first.
Thank you very much. As you know, this past Saturday was Brentwood's 99th birthday. So we are into our 100th year. The Century Foundation, it seems like, has been working on this for a long time, and we're happy that we're finally at a place where we can talk about events that are going to be happening actually next month. So the first thing I'd like to do is to thank the Board of Aldermen and to thank the City of Brentwood for all that they've done to help us as far as we've gone this far. Not only financially, but we have had plenty of support from the staff and from everyone else, and we really appreciate that. We're really looking forward to the next year. And I just really wanted to speak tonight about a couple of the events that are coming up real soon, so you kind of know what's going on. The first event we have is a trivia night. Ed brought up the fancy sign that we're going to be putting around town here, but the trivia night is January 26th. It has a little bit of a Brentwood flavor to it in that we're going to have some Brentwood trivia sprinkled in with the other trivia. The really neat thing about this is that all the proceeds for this night are going to benefit the December 5th Fund. I think probably most of you know what that is. It's a Brentwood-based organization. If you don't know anything about the September 5th Fund, please go home and Google it and watch the video. It can explain it much better than I could standing up here, but it's a really neat organization that does some fantastic things for people that are in need in the St. Louis area. And most of the volunteers that work with this fund are Brentwood folks. So this is truly a Brentwood nonprofit organization that we're very happy to help benefit. So I'm setting out a challenge for every board member to get a table for the trivia night. Brandon and Steve already have their tables. Andy's got a table. So you can go to our website and sign up. It's very simple. Matter of fact, we're setting it up right now so that you can actually pay for it online. So we're trying to make things easy for everybody. In February, we're going to honor residents who have lived in Brentwood for over 75 years. And we'd like to do that at the Board of Aldermen meeting on February 19th. You might think there's a lot, but so far we only know of a few. If any of you know of anyone that has lived in Brentwood for 75 years, please have them get a hold of us. We'd like to honor them on that night. That's a long time. The last time they did something like this was at the 50th anniversary, and they honored people that were here 50 years, which was in the beginning of the town, and this room was full of people. But unfortunately, those numbers have dwindled a little bit, but that's something we're looking forward to. Also in February, we're going to have a program at the Rec Center on February 24th that's going to talk about the Evans-Howard neighborhood, which is the whole area where Promenade is now. It was a long time neighborhood in our town that obviously is not there anymore. So we're going to bring back some folks that live down there, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like down there to live in Evans-Howard. And that's going to be led by Beth Miller, who's a resident in Brentwood, who actually has done a paper for her master's degree on the Evans-Howard neighborhood. It's really interesting, and a lot of people don't even know anything about that area down there, and I think it would be worth their while. And then in March, we're going to have another art exhibit. We had one last year where we featured art of Brentwood residents, both from the past and present. And we're going to do that at the Drury End again. That's going to be on March 30th. And then in May, from May 3rd to 5th, the weekend of May 3rd to 5th, we're going to have a community service weekend that's sponsored by several of the churches here in town. And we're going to, volunteers from Brentwood are going to help folks in Brentwood who need some help with various projects. We're getting the business community and some of the retail establishments to help us out with that. And that's going to be a really cool thing. So we've got a lot of things going on. We're trying to do something practically every month of the year, culminating at the end of the year with the big party of the century in October. So we encourage anybody who wants to know anything about the events that we're putting on to go to our website, which is brentwood100.org. And we have all the information there. Does anybody have any questions?
Alderman Plufka.
I have a question and a comment. First of all, as we were talking, I just signed up a table for trivia night. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Secondly, I've got some friends who represent businesses in Brentwood who are interested, and I want to commend you, the brochure that you put together that has all the different things that you're going to be doing in terms of memorials and things to sort of commemorate the 100th anniversary, the Centennial Plaza, and the other things you're talking about. Fantastic, really well put together, and very, very nice. The only thing that is lacking to some extent is an idea. I want to give these folks a specific idea. If they pledge a certain amount of money, what can they expect in the way of on-site recognition, bricks perhaps, or other kind of plaques or things like that? With that question answered, I'll be talking to Steve about some folks that I think want to donate to some specific projects.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about at a few meetings that we haven't really nailed down, to be honest. But it is something that we will have for anybody that would feel free to come forward.
Great.
The trivia night, I will mention, is now one of our corporate sponsors is West Community Credit Union, has really helped us out. We're looking for other businesses in town or private enterprises to help sponsor any of our events or don't make any type of donations, and all that information is available on the website.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other questions? Alderman Lockmiller.
Your Honor, I do a little bit of guidance here. I would like to try to get the Century Board together after the first year with staff to kind of coordinate these activities that'll be going on. You know, we may need help from fire or police or public works, those type of things. Do I need any type of board approval to have the two groups get together?
I don't think so. I think the board has passed a resolution supporting the Century Foundation on a couple of different occasions, and I think I'll probably just coordinate with BOLA. And I don't, does anybody else on the board disagree? I don't want to answer for the whole board, but yeah, I think we're all right.
Thank you.
Great.
Other questions? I would just say that for my part, the trouble isn't going to be getting a table, it's finding enough friends to fill it, so. But I'll still buy one anyway.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
All right, let's see. We don't have any public hearings tonight, so we have citizen comment. If any member of the public would care to come forward and address the Board of Aldermen on any subject of your choosing, you'll have at least 3 minutes, and your face will appear on our beautiful new TV screens. Stu Clark.
Hi, I'm Stu Clark, 2331 St. Clair Avenue, and I'm the co-chairman of the Brentwood Bound Citizens Task Force. And I just want to thank the Board of Aldermen for supporting the work that we've done so far, and just reiterate what was talked about at the last meeting, that we did have overwhelming support for this idea. And that I know there was some costs that came in at the last minute, but I appreciate you guys stepping up and paying for those and getting everything done, because we're still excited about it. And I just want to remind everybody that our role really is the citizens, trying to represent the citizens in Brentwood and help them, keep them up to date on how this project's going. So I was able to watch the Board of Aldermen meeting on YouTube, and it was great. I mean, I could hear everything, everybody was talking. It was very helpful because I was out of town. So, but I'm back in town. I just wanted to say thanks a lot for all the support. Any questions or anything?
Yep. Thank you very much. Anyone else care to come forward and address the board? Going once, going twice. Sold American. Oh,
wait.
I'm sorry?
Any subject?
Sure. Well, within reason, but yeah.
Definitely within reason. Hello, my name is Mike King. I live at 9405 White Avenue. And what's the long-term plan for this Brentwood Bound? I've read a lot of different things on the internet about a number of different things that are positive and negative specific to this project. And I'm here for 18 months. I moved my family here because my wife and I grew up in St. Louis, and we researched what's the best community in St. Louis to live in. I have the means to live just about anywhere in the area, probably other than Huntley. Okay? What's going on with this thing? I'm reading terrible things. I'm reading not so good things about how this is going. And I also know some of the people who are sitting in front of me, from my daughter and my child. And I'd like to know more. And I don't know, I haven't lived in Brentwood very long, so is that my right to ask?
Sure.
Yes. Okay, so can somebody level with me? I mean, if we're approving funds, and this may be hearsay, okay, because I'm not an attorney, and I went to Coastal Carolina University, so we're good at baseball and golf, but I'm not going to sit here and claim that we're going to win any kind of spelling bees. But what I will say is that common sense should prevail. Can anybody help me with, I'm hearing from some neighbors and other community members that the community spent $40,000 in waiters, is that accurate, prior to my arrival, to clean out the creek and other items? And David, I'll defer to you because you're my alderman. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah,
chairman
typically
deal with
the citizens' comment isn't a discussion, so you're allowed to address the board, but then the board has a chance to respond after you're done. So it's not like a question
okay,
and answer.
Okay, we don't need to do a question and answer. Fair enough. It's your
Sure.
meeting. I'm not here.
Well, no, that's just the rules.
So, David, as my alderman, I'll say these are the way I understand it, is that we haven't had any flooding problems in this area since the community spent, or the city spent $40,000, $50,000 specifically on waiters, other items, and manpower to clean out the creek. I'm reading about $70 million for less than 8,000 citizens. And when I do the math, it's like $8,700, $9,700 per person. And I've spoken to my friends in Webster, and I can't figure out how this is going to connect. So what I need for myself and my daughter and my wife and my son, and maybe others feel the same way, and maybe I'm unique. Some clarity on what's the plan. Do we have a long-term plan? Who are these people who are gonna come after the creek never floods and move in? Is it gonna look like Chesterfield Valley, and how's that work? Or is this a pie-in-the-sky type plan where in April, maybe this just isn't for Brentwood, and maybe we've gone a bridge too far? So with that, I'll leave it, and I'm gonna sit down, but I'd love to hear anybody who'd like to comment on that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? Going 3 times? Would any of the board care to respond? Alderman Plufka. Or Dimmitt, sorry.
No, it's
My fault.
It's hard to keep us straight.
Yes, well, you know.
I will simply tell you that it's a phenomenal plan, and the gentleman that just spoke not too long, Stu Clark, is a great person to reach out to. He lives on St. Clair, and I'm sure Stu would be more than happy to sit down and talk to you. I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk to you, answer any and all questions that you have. If you can make it to any Ward 1 meetings, we have them monthly, Dave and I do, and that's a great time also to ask questions. The only reason I don't want to, if I answered all your questions right now, it would take a long time, and, you know, so you can understand that. And I'd be more than happy to sit down with you over a cup of coffee, anything like that. You let me know what works out for you. If you still have questions after you talk to Stu, if you talk to Stu or anybody else, more than happy to sit down and do that.
Stu, you have the ability to walk me through the financials? I said I went to Coastal, so I'm not.
Okay, well, I have to kind of cut off the private discussion. It's part of the meeting, so I apologize. But would anyone else on the board care to respond? All right, I didn't mean to call on Alderman Plufka earlier. So Alderman Weggie, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike's questions, I think those are evidence of why we need to communicate what's going on with Brentwood Bound. I mean, all the effort and the activity that Stu and the team have done, because it is a very complex plan. It is a very large plan. And I think that just is indicative of why we have to get it out there and why we need to spend time and money to make this happen. And also, I would just encourage all residents, get the facts, right? So don't rely on hearsay. I know every alderman up here, I'm sure, would be very happy to answer any questions, or it's on the website. It's there. Get the facts and don't rely on hearsay. Just find out what the facts are. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Plufka.
I guess I will just say real quick, and the one thing I think that is lost on a lot of this is not just the, and I agree with the sentiments expressed by both Alderman Dimmitt and Alderman Weggie. It is a complex project, and I would love it if we could start talking about it in the way that it's been intended, and that it is Brentwood bound, and that's 3 projects bound together. It is not simply a flood abatement project. It is a flood abatement project combined with a connection to the Great Rivers Greenway, combined with a streetscape renovation of a section of highway that runs through the city of Brentwood that hasn't been touched in 40 years. It is going to be a dramatic change in not only the streetscape, but the businesses along that area. It is going to represent a dramatic change in the opportunities for folks that live in Brentwood to not only take advantage of the Great River Greenway, but we're going to have an extension of our own trail and park system that's been in existence for at least 25 or 30 years. And then finally, it is an effort to try and to abate flooding that has been habitual on that section of road. It is true that it hasn't flooded in the last recent period of time, but in a not so long period of time, it has flooded repeatedly and to expensive results for the folks and the businesses that live and operate along that stretch of road. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman O'Neill, would you care to join in? Or? Anyone else? I would respond just with this is encourage you to talk to Stu or I see Brad sitting over here, and either one of them would be happy to talk to you about that. They're very informed. Many of the questions that you asked actually were at least somewhat addressed at the open houses that were had a month ago. So we'll give hopefully another opportunity to do that type of thing. And then finally, what I would say is if there are enough citizens that have enough interest, I am very happy to have a special meeting of the Board of Aldermen that would be held in sort of a committee of the whole format where we could each, answer questions. We could have the discussion that that we can't have at an open business meeting. So I'm more than happy to have that and take part in it. So if there are enough citizens that feel it's worth the time, I'm very happy to dedicate my time for it. And I can't speak for the board, but I can't imagine any of them wouldn't be happy to put in the time to do it as well. So, absolutely anytime. All right, item number 8, mayor and alderman reports. So that was probably a good segue into my report tonight. I actually have put together some information for the board, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you kind of a preview of the next couple months. I'm going to be using my report time to address certain areas of policy that I think are important to the city. I hope they won't be too boring. My aim is to make them about 10 minutes each, but I want to make sure that I am fulfilling my obligation to continue to keep the board informed as to sort of what's going on and what my thoughts are onto how best address issues that are coming up. So, I think in the interest of brevity, I've wasted that time before, but I think for at least a couple months here, I'm going to do that. Next week, just to follow up on your questions, next week I'm actually going to be addressing the topic of financing for the Brentwood Bound project. So if you have time to come to the Alderman meeting on the 7th of January, I will be specifically addressing that topic for the entire board as well as anybody else who's in the audience. But tonight, I want to talk a little bit about crime. And the reason I want to talk a little bit about crime is because I have said many times before that I think that public safety is probably the most important thing that we do in the city. Just real quick, my theory of government is that government is here to provide services that nobody else can or will, right? Primarily, right? So things like roads, right? There's nobody going to build roads for us. There's nobody going to provide public safety for you for a fee, right? You're not going to be able to go out and hire your own armed guards. So a police force is necessary. The fire department is necessary. The roads are necessary. And I think those are the things that government should focus on and do best. And of those things, if you think about in terms of relative priority, public safety is probably the number one thing, because if you don't have public safety, then you can't enjoy any of the other stuff that I was talking about. So public safety is the number one thing, and I think crime is of interest to us all. And I've been working on this problem literally since I got elected, and I'm going to continue working on it even after I'm not elected, because I think it's an interesting problem that to deal with, and I think it's also something that's very important to all of us. So with that, I'm going to start off by providing to you some information. You'll have to bear with me for 1 second. Oh, here it is. All right, so what I'm showing you here on this slide is it's actually data that is from the Missouri Uniform Crime Reporting Database. And this is a database that's run by the State Highway Patrol and has been since about 2000. This is the reason I came to find this database is that I was reading in the Post-Dispatch, actually their online version, and they have a crime map. And you can go and you can click around on the crime map and you can see crime data from different places and municipalities. Unfortunately, the way that they were presenting the data didn't answer a lot of questions that I had. And so I said, I wonder where they're getting that data. And after a little bit of digging, I found out that it's all pretty much available on the Missouri State Highway Patrol website. And so what you're seeing here is all of the available crime data for Brentwood for violent crimes. And what they define violent crimes as is rape, murder, aggravated assault, and all of the favorites. These are the crimes that, quite frankly, we all worry about most, right? These are the ones that people really get hurt. And as you can see in Brentwood, since 2001, violent crime has remained more or less constant. There's quite a bit of variance, right? Some years it was 2 incidents, and in some years it was 19 incidents. But more or less, there is a trend. Actually, it's a little bit downward, although I wouldn't put any money on that. There's a trend of about 12 violent crimes in Brentwood per year over the last 17 years, and that's been very consistent. What has changed a little bit in Brentwood is property crimes, okay? And property crimes is everything basically that's not a violent crime, okay? That's kind of the way and actually these crimes are actually defined according to FBI terms. That's why it's a uniform crime reporting database. So I'm actually just using the data straight as they give it to us. So when they say property crime, I'm just putting up what number they report for property crimes. As you can see, property crimes are similarly fairly consistent in Brentwood since 2001. But you notice that there is a little bit of an upward trend to the line. If you look at, that's a least squares fit to that line. And you can see that there's a little bit of an upward trend. But the truth is that trend is about 2 crimes per year. Okay, so out of a total of 300 or so per year, we're increasing at a rate of about 2 or 3 per year. I don't put a whole heck of a lot of stock in that increase, right? It doesn't say a lot about anything to me. It also doesn't say a lot about something that I think people have been talking about in Brentwood for a long time, and that is, when we opened up our retail, that's when all of our crime problems started. And quite frankly, the data doesn't bear that out. Granted, the data only goes back to 2000, but I will tell you that the Metrolink station opened right here in 2006, and yeah, we did see 400 property crimes that very next year, but 2 years later, we were down around 200 for an all-time low. So, I think it's important, folks, because there's a lot of people who will tell you, we didn't have any crime until we got the Metrolink. Well, that's simply just not true. And I just don't think it does any of us any good to base any of our decisions or even to go around repeating that kind of stuff if it's not true, right? You can say, I think that's true, or it seems to me that's true, because maybe that's your perception. But if you're going to talk about anything in real terms and data terms, it's just not the case. We have a little bit more property crime. I can tell you that as compared to, I've done this for our surrounding communities, Webster, Ladue, Richmond Heights, and Clayton, and we're very similar. In fact, we're better off than most. Actually, they're all pretty much identical to us, except for Maplewood. Maplewood has a much higher incidence of property crime than we do, and any of those other surrounding communities that I talked about. Okay, so why is this? Let me talk to you about a couple of things that are related to crime. When I saw that data, when I started looking at this problem, there were certain crimes that really concerned me. And they weren't, the fact that a teenager grabs a pair of tennis shoes over at Target and runs out the door doesn't really bother me. Target is in a great position to prevent that from happening. And if Target doesn't prevent that from happening, it's really, I'm not going to lose a whole heck of a lot of sleep over it, right? What really bothers me are the kinds of crimes that came up right before I was elected and then very shortly after. And that's where we had a young man over on Sonora who got a gun put in his face, and he got told to give him his car or get out. When we had this young woman over in Brentwood Forest just this summer who was beaten and then her car was taken. When we had the carjacking that occurred, just before the election over in Brentwood Forest, when the young lady brought home her brand new car and got a gun shoved in her face and told to get the heck out. These are the things that really bother me, folks. These are the crimes that I'm really worried about. And it's no secret why, right? Out of the 400 property crimes that are committed in Brentwood, those are the only ones that put any of our citizens in danger. right? The guy who steals the tennis shoes isn't putting me in any danger. He's probably not putting you in any danger. And you know, at most, he's going to harm the price of tennis shoes at Target. But the fellows who are out there running around putting guns in people's faces or beating people to take their cars, I'm worried about that. And so when I talked to Dan Fitzgerald about it, because Dan was our police chief at the time, Dan told me that he thought, specifically about the incident on Sonora, Dan told me that it was his best guess that that particular crime was a crime of opportunity, right? That this was a fellow who was out opening car doors or trying to open car doors. He saw somebody coming home at 2 a.m, and he approached him, saw that he was a mark, and decided to stick a gun in his face and take advantage of it. Well, that bothered me a lot because that's, I couldn't think of a way to really, you know, if it's a crime of opportunity, that's kind of a really random thing, right? If there are really people just lurking in our neighborhoods waiting for an opportunity to take advantage of us, that's going to be really hard to put a stop to. But I wanted to see what we could do to address that issue. And so it was about that same time that Ben von Hartsberg, I don't know if you all remember Ben, he was the project manager over in the Public Works Department. Ben had actually just taken the initiative to solve another problem that we had. And that problem was, if you remember, it was when our Director of Public Works had resigned and the Public Works Department got put under Director Grunenfelder. And Ben was working for Eric, and they had suspected that we had a number of employees who were joyriding city vehicles. Okay, so they were taking city vehicles out, and the reason they suspected it is because of the odometer readings and some of the fuel and stuff like that. But they really were having a hard time getting a handle on it. And so Ben took the initiative to put GPS tracking in most of the Public Works and Parks vehicles. And lo and behold, our city vehicles were being used for joyrides, and we were able to prove it very simply and put an end to that situation. And so I had heard about that, may have been involved in some of those discussions, don't remember, but it occurred to me that if we could keep track of our police activity, right, our patrol activity, maybe what we could do is find a correlation between the things that we were doing in order to deploy our resources, right, and the things that were happening in our neighborhoods. And again, I'm not talking about the retail area. I'm talking about things that were putting our citizens in danger, right? That's what I was really concerned about. So what I thought was, hey, maybe there's a way to correlate that patrol activity or the deployment of our resources with what's going on in our neighborhoods. And maybe over a long period of time, we can get enough information to see if there's some better way to do things that would lead to a lower incidences of these random events, okay? It's a long shot, but it was all I could think to do, okay? So we actually did. I talked to Dan Fitzgerald. We put GPS tracking in the police vehicles. And you would have thought that that would have started providing you the information you needed. Unfortunately, this is what happened. Oh, sorry, my computer's running a little bit slow here. It's a gigantic spreadsheet, I'm sorry. Oh, here it is, right here. So this is the data that came out of our GPS tracking system. And this spreadsheet is probably, I don't know. It's at least several thousand rows long, right? And it gives you some longitude and latitude coordinates, dates and times, right? But it doesn't give you any information that's going to help you immediately solve the issue of, you know, how does our patrol activity correlate to what happens in our neighborhoods, okay? So what I thought was, well, the company that provides our GPS tracking information has a way of tracking vehicles. Let's look at that. And when I looked at that, what I found was that the ability to track a vehicle was there, but it was only for the last 2 days, and it was only for one vehicle at a time. So if you wanted to sit there and watch one vehicle at a time in pretty much real time, you could see where that vehicle had been. Well, if what you're trying to do is correlate your patrol activities with your crime stuff, nobody's going to sit around and watch that happen, okay? It's just not going to produce any data that's useful, okay? So that was a real problem. So what I did was I started taking these spreadsheets that I showed you, and I just wrote some basic stuff that would allow you to take those spreadsheets and feed them into Google's interface. And so you could plot out on Google's interface how those things were happening, right? And what that did was that would kind of allow you to see how things are moving in more or less real time, and actually you could speed it up and slow it down and things like that. And so I did that. I just took those spreadsheets and I said, okay, and it started slow. It was one at a time. Put in the spreadsheet, run the program, push the buttons, see what happens, right? But after a while, you could actually see some information. And so what I did was I started to do that for individual days worth of data. And again, what I was after was what was happening with the patrol activity. Unfortunately, what happened was I found out that one of our activities or one of our issues may have been that we did not have a whole lot of patrol activity going on. And so what you're looking at here is a map of Brentwood, and this is a little program that writes all the GPS data from all the different vehicles at the same time onto the map. And this little blob you see right here in the middle of this is the police station, okay? And you can see down here the time has been sped up to 1,000 times the original amount of time. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm showing you an entire 12-hour day that's taking place in about 1 minute. Okay, so in 12 hours, a shift that started at 6 a.m., right, and ran until 6 p.m., right, this is all of the activity that occurred in Brentwood. Now, the problem with this is, yeah, I lost the picture. There we go. It's not catching up. The problem with that is you, well, actually, there you go. The problem with that, as you can see, is that in 12 hours, our police vehicles left the police station approximately 3 times. They went out to look at a minor traffic accident over there by the highway. They all 4 responded to a child that was lost in Brentwood Forest. And they took a couple of trips up to Clayton to drop off some documents or whatever needed to be done in Clayton. Okay? I had this information 2 years ago. I didn't share it with anybody, except a few members of the board. Actually, I had shared it with the entire board about a year ago. Right? And a lot of people said, why don't you share this information? And I said, because it won't solve the problem. The problem is how to prevent our citizens from being threatened in our neighborhoods, how to keep them safe. I don't see how embarrassing the police department helps solve that problem. Okay? So I just continued to take data. And over a period of about 1.5 years, I was able to generate maps like this that would help us figure out where we're spending the most time on our patrol activities, okay? And as you can see, this red dot over here is the police station. And this red dot over here is the Quick Trip over on Richmond Heights. And this is the center of town, right at the intersection of Strassner and Brentwood Boulevard, right? And this is Brentwood Forest. And as you can see, there's some streets back over here in Ward 3 that hardly saw a police vehicle in a whole month, right? So this is the type of information that I think might be helpful if we use it, okay? So I had a talk with, at that point in time, if you remember, that was about the time that Dan resigned from being the police chief and decided to become the director of activities for the CYC, and Chief McIntyre took over as the acting chief, right? So Assistant Chief McIntyre and I had a discussion about it, and he put into effect a directive that said, hey, you have to be moving at all times. You have to be patrolling the neighborhoods. You have to be doing these things, right? And you have to cover an entire patrol zone. He actually divided the town into 4 zones and told the police officers they were each responsible to patrol a zone, right? And in 1 month, that's the change that we got. In 1 month, okay? Now, I'm not telling you that this is the solution to the problem, right? I'm simply telling you that this is information that we might be able to use if we correlate it with the criminal activities that we're trying to affect, that we might be able to come up with some sort of solution to this very hard to solve problem. Okay? That's what I was doing. That's what I did with this information. One thing that that came up, and this is just, I'm going to provide this as an example of the kind of information that I think is important for us to look at. So, oops, sorry. If I'm giving you vertigo, I apologize. So on November 10th, 2017, somebody posted on Nextdoor this post. And it said, hey, look, there's a guy who walked up my driveway. Don't worry, I'm gonna have the pictures up in a second. Basically, this happened at 10:44 on Tuesday night. Well, Tuesday night was three days prior, right? So I looked at the pictures, and sure enough, there's our friend, Mr. Don't know who he is, bad guy, right? And you can see he's walking right up this driveway, right over on Pine. Right? He sets off the motion detector light. That light was off a second ago. Now it's on, right? And this is at 10:44 at night. This isn't like 2 in the morning, right? This is when my kids are taking out the trash sometimes, right? No, seriously. This is the kind of crap that scares the shit, the heck out of me, folks. I mean, seriously. What if my kid runs into this guy, right? What if he's got a knife? I don't know what, I know he's up to no good. But I don't know what he's going to do, right? Hopefully he'd just run away, but maybe not. He's certainly not afraid of a light that pops on, right? A motion detector light. You can see he looks up to see if anybody's there. Nope, nobody's there. It's just a motion detector light. And what does he do? He goes over to the next door neighbor's house and starts trying the garage door. And then he runs off through the backyard. Okay? So when I saw this post, I said, hey, that's exactly the kind of activity we're trying to get a handle on, right? Is some guy creeping around at 10:44 at night, right, trying the doors. So I thought maybe what we ought to do is have a look and see what happened during that time. So this is Brentwood on a Tuesday evening at 9 o'clock. It's a usual night in Brentwood, right? Here's our patrol activity. You see people out patrolling the streets, et cetera, et cetera. And watch the clock down there. It's showing 10 o'clock right now, right? And you can see by this time what had happened is we were also getting a feed from the dispatch data. right? I don't know if you folks know it, but that dispatch data is publicly available. You pay a subscription to a company, you can be on the dispatch, okay? So we had incorporated a feed from the dispatch, right, into the situation. And don't worry, I'm going to roll it back. No, if I could get it to come up again. It didn't perform like this before. Oh, this is Windows Media Player. That's the problem. Hold on. I should know better than to use Windows for anything. That's the trouble. All right, here we are. So as you can see, it's Friday night, right? We're on our, and you'll look, and I'm going to stop this at about 10:30-ish. You're going to see 3 events pop in right there. I'm going to stop it. Okay. There's 3 events that pop in, right? We had a suspicious person reported at 10:27. Okay? At 10:27, they got a call from somebody on Litzinger reporting a suspicious person. Okay? And don't forget, this is the night where we just saw the guy running up the driveway, right? Checking the doors. Okay? They got us a report. All of our cars respond, at least 3 of the 4. This one's going to respond here in a second, right? And they go in the direction, and my guess is the person on Litzinger told them, hey, they're going up Park Ridge, right? That's the direction they were headed because they all go straight up that direction. Okay? All right, now we all have a little powwow to compare notes, find out what we know, right? And then we're going to go off and we're going to sweep the neighborhood and see if we can find what's going on. Okay? Now, my goal in looking at this was to talk to Chief McIntyre and say, Chief McIntyre, is there anything we can learn from this? Because we didn't know it at the time, but now we know that there was a guy over on Pine at 1044 who was going north, right? It's possible that if we would have gone up to Whitehall and gone down there, right, we might have caught the guy. He did leave going north through the backyard on Pine. I don't know, right? I'm not saying that anybody made any mistakes. It doesn't matter to me, right? It's important to me that we take the information and we use it to try to do a better job to keep people safe. It's a really hard thing to track all this random stuff. So if you're gonna put a stop to it, it seems to me that you have to do it in a systematic method. And this is information that we can use to possibly do better the next time or prevent it. And these little pins you see right here are actually how we get most of our information from the citizens about what's going on in their neighborhoods. So if we start grabbing and tracking that data, then we can correlate it to what we're doing to try to prevent these things. And that is, I think, how we might have a chance to start doing a better job. Okay, so, what I'm going to tell you is it's a really, really hard problem. There aren't any easy answers. I can promise you that. But I think the best we can do is try to continue to attack it in a systematic way and learn everything we can about what we're doing so that we can do a better job. And like I said, I don't really care too much about Target losing a pair of sneakers. That doesn't bother me overly much. I mean, I don't want it to happen, but I don't think I'm going to be able to prevent shoplifting at Target or anywhere else. What I do care about is people running around our neighborhoods with impunity, and that if my kid's out taking out the trash at 10:45 at night and comes across the wrong person and has a gun stuck in his face, that's what I care about. And if we can prevent that, then we probably should. That's what I got. Alderman Dimmitt.
No report.
My screen hasn't refreshed yet. Alderman Kramer.
Report, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, who's next? I'm still waiting for this stupid thing to clear.
Alderman Leahy.
Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. For the month of December, there will not be a Ward 3 meeting because of Christmas next week. And for the benefit of the public, the city of Brentwood and a small group is hosting a blood drive at the rec center on January the 25th from 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday to 8 p.m. that evening. If you go on the American Red Cross website, you can register and hopefully come up and help us collect blood. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Alderman Lockmiller.
No report.
Alderman Plufka.
Public safety would be scheduled for the 26th of December this month. We are not having a public safety meeting.
Did I skip? Oh, I am so sorry. I had my cursor right over the top of your name, too.
And I-
Alderman O'Neill.
Yes, Ward 4 will not be meeting this month because of the holidays. Everybody's welcome to join us next month.
Alderwoman Sims.
No report.
And Alderman Weggie.
Just a thank you to Parks and Rec for the Santa visit. I don't know what strings you had to pull to make that happen, but my kids were ecstatic.
Was apparently a contract with the North Pole, but as far as I know, it went through proper channels.
Great activity and just very positive feedback from all the kids in the neighborhood that came over. So thanks for doing that.
All right. City Administrator, Madam City Administrator, you got anything for us tonight?
Absolutely. Mayor Craig Schluter is here with the city administrator update on the Brentwood Bound project.
Good evening. Craig Schluter with Navigate Building Solutions. So I will be providing the city administrator update for December 17th. In regards to investment costs, there were no recent investment costs. So total spent to date remains at $757,270.37. Recent direct project costs include the flood mitigation, design and engineering, Manchester Road improvements, design and engineering, and the impact zoning and development design support. Total spent to date is $1,700,717.70. And lastly, the recent indirect or sunk costs include the Brentwood Bound informational marketing materials and consultant support and project management. Total spent to date is $894,295.31. One piece of new business is at the next meeting, January 7th, we will be bringing to the board the next deposit for the MoDOT cost share agreement. As you may recall, the city executed in a cost share agreement, which is the grant application. In that agreement, there are various criteria for deposit deadlines in order for the city to continue to be part of that project and to make sure they get that grant. So at the January 7th board meeting, we'll be bringing in the next deposit, which is per that agreement, $1,428,390. That will then signify when MoDOT starts doing all the easement and property acquisitions for the whole stretch of Manchester Road improvements. So that's a big milestone that'll take place in January.
Looking forward to that one. Any questions? Alderman Lockmiller.
Greg, it's kind of the season for water main breaks, and I've noticed along Manchester Road, there's been quite a few in the past week or so.
Okay.
Is there an effort with MoDOT and American Water to look at, are they going to be doing any massive improvement at the same time or after we do these improvements? Is there a coordinated effort with them?
In regards to like water mains?
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
so we've had this problem before. We've done road improvement. Next thing we know, American Water's tearing up and trenching the road we've just done. Do they coordinate that? Does, I guess, MoDOT coordinate with the underground utilities if they've got any infrastructure improvements coming before we do this project?
They do coordinate with the other agencies, and I know there's been a lot of discussions with Missouri Sewer District. I can't tell you specifically what coordination's been done with Missouri American Water, but I can follow up after this meeting and let you know specifics.
Great, thank
Yeah, I think that would be great. Steve and I share that frustration. And the brand new street on Pine or on Tillis got torn up like 3 days after it was done. Thank you, Alderman Plufka.
Thank you. With regard to the impact zoning redevelopment design, we're not going to have a report by the end of the moratorium. We're going to be asked to extend that moratorium. How close are we to getting a design concept from them? Do you know?
So that's more Lisa's forte, but Lisa, I believe we're targeting middle of March. Is that accurate? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions?
One more question.
Oh, yeah, Alderman Weggie.
And I apologize probably for putting you on the spot, but
No
the
worries.
Clomer, so can you refresh my memory? So in my mind, I had it that early 2019 is when we are expecting to have the Clomer submitted and have an answer on that. Is that still what we're tracking to, or did I misremember that?
That's correct.
Do you know, like, is it like February 2019 or?
But for submission or from response?
Submission.
Submission.
Yeah. I don't have the exact date in top of my head, but we are meeting with the Jacobs design team tomorrow morning at 8:30, and I can follow up and get you an exact time frame.
Okay, and
Sorry,
when
I
we
just don't
submit, and
have that
then what's
memorized.
the, and I apologize again, the expectation for how long it would take for them to respond, I think we said was 90 days?
Correct. I recall 90 days is 6 months, but again, I'll find out that date tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you.
Craig, I don't know, a while back, you and I discussed some information about Clomer, like how the Clomer process goes from Jacobs. Do you know if we ever got that and passed it around? I think I remember seeing it, but I don't remember.
We did, and I believe we shared that response with the board.
Did we?
Yeah, I can resend it.
Okay, I'm just on that topic,
That question
it was
was
basically a walk through the Clomer-Lomer process and, kind of how it goes for other projects that they worked on or whatever, so.
Yeah, I know that something was shared, and you're thinking also of something else where I think the accuracy of the Clomars and Lomars.
Yeah.
And Jacobs, responded that.
Well, basically, my question to them, and it was inspired by Alderman Weggie, is what made me think
Yeah.
of it, was that what is the chance, in your opinion, that you're gonna submit a Clomer that's not gonna get approved?
Approved.
As submitted, right?
Correct.
And they said next to nothing, and I said, okay, back that up. And so they gave me a memo that I think I remember seeing, and that's what I was asking. I don't remember if I saw it or not, but.
It did get issued. I don't know from your team if it went out.
Yeah,
to
I
the
don't know if
court.
it was to me. I think it was actually to you. I think you're the one that asked the question. I was sort of beating on you about it, so. Anyway, if we can get that out to everybody, that'd be great.
I just found the email document that was prepared by Jacobs, so I'm happy to resend that to the board.
Sure. But ultimately, it just states that Jacobs talked to all their lead designers, and they weren't aware of one project that the Clomar did not get approved that they submitted. So, to what your point that.
Like I
it
said,
is-
I just remember asking the question because Alderman Weggie raised the point, so.
Yeah, sure.
Other questions? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Also tonight, we have, well, this is your report, but you want me to, the next thing on your report says a request for a conditional use permit.
If the mayor would recognize Lisa.
Lisa?
Kortenmeier?
You are recognized.
Good evening. So in June 2017, the Board of Aldermen approved a site development plan and a conditional use permit for a 7-story hotel for property located at 1693 and 1695 South Hanley Road to EQH Brentwood LLC. So in accordance with the section of the code, the CUP is valid for a period of 1 year. Within that year, a building permit is supposed to be obtained and also construction should begin. This section of the code also, though, allows extensions to be granted by the Board of Aldermen without a public hearing. And those extensions to that CUP can be granted in increments of time of 180 days. So this past June, it was presented to the board to grant a first extension to this developer for the hotel, which was granted. And now the first extension will actually expire December 23rd of this year. So we did receive, the city administrator, a letter from the developer on December 5th requesting a second extension. And in that letter, the developer does comment that the developer and Marriott International remains fully committed to beginning construction of this new hotel in 2019. So I'm bringing this before you tonight for requesting the second extension. That extension then would be good until, what did I have here? June 15th, 2019, if it was granted this evening. The developer is here. Mr. Chapman, if you have any questions for Mr. Chapman or for myself.
Alderman
I
Plufka.
have a question for you, Lisa. Is there any limitation within the ordinance to us granting multiple extensions like this?
No, it's just listed plural extensions, so there can be more than one granted and there's no cap.
Very good. Thank you. That's all the question I have.
Alderman Lockmiller.
I went by the property today and it seems to be well-maintained in its current condition. Is it being used at all, the current building?
That I actually do not know.
Chapman, though? Curious.
We are maintaining it.
Yes, it looks nice. Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is simple. You closed on the property, but we haven't moved any further. What's dragging us? Is that open for public discussion, or is that going to hurt what you're doing?
Of course. I mean, I have
Please.
nothing to hide. The request for this extension is to give us, we were on track to, we have a 99% set of plans on track to apply for building permits by December 23rd of this year. We need extra time to react to amazing cost increases in the industry. Cost of structural steel and all specialty steels has gone up 25% in the last 6 months. And so we need some extra time to refine our design for the project to try to get a control on those.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. On the consent agenda is item number 10.
Yes.
Say again?
You need a
Motion to approve the extension.
Thank you.
Oh, righto. That would be
Second.
great. Let's do that. Sorry. So it's moved and seconded? Yeah. Alderman Wege, seconded by Alderman Plufka, to grant the extension to, what is it?
June 15.
Equus Hospitality Management LLC as applied for. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill, Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims.
Yes.
And Alderman Wege.
Yes.
Well, Alderman Wege wasn't going to let you get out of here without what you wanted. All right, congratulations. All right, so now number 10 on the agenda is the consent agenda. So if I'm keeping up with what's going on, the consent agenda now consists of approving the minutes of the October 15th meeting, Resolution 1121, the diversion of waste, waste diversion grant, which typically we use to buy recycling bins. Resolution 1122, amending the date of the January 22nd regularly scheduled meeting to the 17th in order that we can meet some deadlines that are set by statute. And then we go all the way down to item, if I'm not mistaken, I, or is I taken off?
No, I is in.
I is still on the consent agenda, right?
Yes.
All right, so that would be Resolution 1127, resolution revising sanitation collection fees for optional services in Brentwood. That has to do with the round back trash collection. And item K, the warrant list. Yes? Did I get that right?
I think that's right, sir.
Hey, all right, that's the first thing I've gotten right all night. All right, I'd take a motion to approve the warrant list as amended. Or, sorry, the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of the consent agenda? Alderman Leahy.
If I may ask, on the warrant list itself, we have a Richmond Heights senior program that we are now ending our first year as a joint program with the intent to increase the number of seniors and stuff that we're meeting in the area. And I'd like to know if we have any other results or what, something to measure what we're doing for the $95,000 that we're looking to spend.
Madam City Administrator, is that one you want to take off the top of your head, or?
No, I don't. Eric, I know that we continue to do surveys of the patrons in our senior program, and we're actually tracking the number of Brentwood residents that do participate. So Eric and his staff, if the mayor would recognize, Eric, if you want to add to what I've said, are developing other ways to be able to market to the senior group. I want to acknowledge Alderwoman O'Neill. She has been very instrumental in providing staff feedback, and I've had ongoing dialogue with the city of Richmond Heights so that we can actually offer programs that are truly of interest to the seniors. And we have two groups of seniors. We have those that are defined as active seniors and those who want a little bit more passive activity. So we're trying to meet the needs of both groups. So our goal definitely is to increase it, and we're open to suggestions from all who may have ways to encourage us to grow it.
If I may request in the next city administrator report, when we get the parks information, if we could have something in there that kind of gives us a feedback, how successful was the first year and what numbers did we generate?
How would you define success?
That's what I'm looking for. We agreed that.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to cut this off. So I'm going to ask you a pretty simple question because I'm just going to try to get to, is it a big enough deal that you want to amend the warrant list, or do we want
No,
to?
I wanted to just clarification is we spent $95,000.
No, I understand.
What did we get?
I understand.
for our
And like I
effort?
said, if you want to take it off the warrant list, let's do
Yep.
that. If you don't, then let's move along, approve it, and you can figure out.
Thank you.
Just to make sure I'm tracking, so there's 6 items on the consent agenda now, correct?
I believe that's what I read off, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. We all clear? I just really need the board to be clear on what they're approving. That's the most important thing, right? Okay, so any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion to approve the consent agenda as amended, yes vote in favor, no vote no. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Dimmitt,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill, Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
and Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
All right, so that's the consent agenda done. Number 11 on the agenda is old business. Tonight we have bill number 6227. And Mr. City Attorney, could I get the second reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6227, second reading and consideration for adoption. An ordinance adopting the annual budget for the city of Brentwood for the calendar year 2019 and providing for the effective date of this ordinance.
All right, Chair would entertain a motion to perfect.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman O'Neill, seconded by Alderman Plufka. Is there any discussion of the bill? Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll bring the attention to a couple pages that are going on. Page 117, under the capital expenditures, we have a $75,000 dash cam request from the police department. I'd like to know if that $75,000 is just for the cameras, or does that include the cost of running them, data storage, and all of this that we're looking at, or is this something that may grow in expenditure?
Madam City Administrator, I don't see our chief with us tonight, so I'll.
Yes.
He's
So-
hiding behind Diane Gummersheimer.
I think Chief Spees and Larry Covey could answer those, so whoever wants to go first.
Well, I'll let them decide. Chief?
You're talking about the S-cams for next year?
Yes. There's a $75,000 line item on page 117.
I can't find that on page 117. I've looked. I don't see, on page 117, I have Planning Development Department.
I'm using the
The
printout,
old-
the printout one that was given, the third copy of the printout one that was given to me.
So this is under capital improvement projects?
Yes, ma'am. Under the police department.
If you can give me a
Okay.
quick minute to find that.
Your Honor, if I may ask another question then while we're looking?
Yep.
In the police department budget on page 97 is the community commitment to the National Night Out program for $267 for the National Night Out Block Party program. I'd like to see that budget, that amount increased. This year, we had 13 block parties, and $267 barely covers anything, let alone supporting the host residents that help pull the block parties together.
I can throw one heck of a party for $267.
Well, but you're dividing that across 13 different block parties, and it just doesn't seem like a really good commitment.
I understand what you're saying.
To work
Yeah,
with.
No, I'm just fooling around. Okay.
Yeah.
Madam City Administrator, is that one you care to talk to? Or?
If Alderman Leahy is referring to the evidence tracking license plate recognition, is that what you're calling the dash cam?
It said dash cams.
Oh.
2020.
Okay, you're gonna go with the, on page 90, I'm sorry, page 122, there is a $45,000 expenditure for the engine room floor in the fire department.
Exactly.
What are we doing on the floor? I thought we had the concrete and everything fixed the first year that we poured it.
No, that is not correct. It's still slippery. It's dangerous, hazardous to the firefighters when the floor is wet. So we're looking to address that next year.
Okay. And then
Perhaps we could use it as a practice area for the skating rink?
yeah. The last item,
Trying to be practical.
The last item, Your Honor, that I'd like to discuss is on page 99 of the capital expenditures. It's a $33,500 expenditure for an electric sign for the police department to go with, and I'm not 100% sure what we're trying to
That
accomplish
may be
with
what
it.
I just mentioned.
That's a $33,000 expenditure. The other one was a $75,000.
The sign trailer?
The sign trailer's $33,500.
And this one, how did you describe it again?
Page 99 on the capital expense. For electronic sign, I'm not sure why we're buying a sign for $33,000.
I think we were going to buy the sign, and the chief may jump in. We were going to buy this sign this year. We went, issued an RFP. We didn't get anyone to respond. Am I getting that right? And so because, we were closely approaching the end of the year, we're going to try next year and give it another try and see if we can find vendors that can supply this to the city.
Thank you. Those are all I had, sir.
Okay. Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, are we ready for a vote? Very good. Roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill? Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Waggy?
Yes.
Bill number 6227 passes and upon signature of their mayor becomes ordinance number 4865.
All right, thank you very much. Number 11 under B, old business, is bill number 6228. Mr. City Attorney, can we have the second reading by title only, please?
Bill number 6228, second reading and consideration for adoption, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 3514 and granting a conditional use permit and approved site development plan to LC Restaurant LLC, doing business as Lion's Choice Restaurant, for property numbered 1605 South Hanley Road.
Chair would entertain a motion to perfect.
Your Honor, I move to perfect Bill 6228 into ordinance form.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Plufka and seconded by Alderman Lockmiller. Is there any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, we will have a roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
No.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Bill number 6228 passes and upon signature of the mayor becomes ordinance number 4866.
All right, thank you. Now, under new business, what was formerly an empty agenda has now received all sorts of new items, and I will do my best to get these correct, but I think I got it. So we're going to start with resolution number, 1123, which relates to a dog park. I would ask that we begin the discussion with a motion to adopt resolution 1223.
Second.
Moved by Alderwoman O'Neill and seconded by Alderman Leahy to adopt Resolution 1223.
1123.
Oh, sorry, 1123, my apologies. And let's see, I forget who moved to take this one off. So we'll begin with Alderwoman O'Neill.
There's no financial limit to this resolution. It simply says costs will be borne by Brentwood and then shared by Clayton. What's concerning is the additional construction costs. They've been discussed, but nothing's been approved. And some of those look as though they could be pricey. So I'm wondering, is there a way that staff plans to look at this and bring it back to us once there is money involved? And this is simply a general resolution at this point. Can Eric perhaps talk to that?
Our resident expert on dog parks is Director Grinenfelder.
Definitely leads the pack.
I didn't hear that. I'm
I like
sorry.
that one.
I
That
had
was
no
good.
witty comeback for that
No,
one.
that was good.
Great dog park joke. You missed a
Besides
good
little.
one.
So, as far as the costs, obviously Clayton's boring the entire cost of the fence, which is the primary
We
cost
understand that.
of all that. The other things the only other cost that we're really looking at is a water line for a water fountain, which, as we've heard in the Hanley Park Dog Park, is a concern. So the big thing on that is about 10 to 15,000. The cost of that is primarily tapping into the water line. That is somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000, depending on getting the backflow, having the plumber come out to perform all that work, getting the trench from the backflow to wherever the water fountain's going to be located, obviously putting it on a concrete pad and a water fountain that has ADA accessible, and of course a pet bowl. So that's where your cost for that is going to be located. Beyond that, Clayton's also donating 4 benches for the dog park, so we're good there. The only thing we talked about is primarily 2 shade structures. So to put over the benches, because if you've been out to Norm West Park, there is no shade. Again, Clayton boards half the cost of that, so we're looking good there. The last thing that we've discussed was the cost of the crushed granite, primarily on entrance ways on both sides and in the winter area. As we discussed in the memo, it's $35 per ton, and we're really finalizing where that's going to be. So we're hopefully, if we get this approved tonight, should have that in hopefully the next couple of weeks.
How does the winter area differ from the large dog and small dog areas?
The third area, the idea of that is when, during the winter or when it's wet, you can lock up the other 2 gates, push everyone to that third area, and that way you can hold the grass longer.
Thank you.
Alderman Plufka.
Thank you. I just have a point of clarification with our city administrator. Any expenditures with regard to this resolution would have to come back before us for approval, would they not?
We have been updating Public Works Committee every step of the way. So we can definitely, I don't know if these are items that would, based on the cost, we would
My thought
obviously
is-
go out for quotes.
My thought is basically anything that's above $2,000 that would warrant being on the warrant list would obviously come back to the Board of Aldermen.
Right.
Anything that'd be below that would just be a normal cost.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Leahy.
Eric, how are we going to handle parking in this area?
Right now, we have the parking lot that MSD completed for us, which is right next to the soccer field. So that's the parking for this area.
So you're going to use it as a joint use to work with?
Correct.
We can handle how many total cars at one time?
I believe the parking lot is 35 spaces.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the resolution? Are we ready for a vote? All right, the motion on the table is to approve Resolution 1123. Roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt?
Yes.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
And Alderman Wiggy?
Yes. Well, that's unanimous, so we'll take that one on. The next item under new business is Resolution 1124. I'd like to start the discussion by asking for a motion to adopt Resolution 1124.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Lee, seconded by Alderman Lockmiller to adopt 1124, and I think this was also Alderwoman O'Neill?
Yes, thank
All
you.
right, very good. So we'll start with you.
All right. I think this is fine to have the school district have a joint thing at low cost, but my question is, if we are allowing the city, another taxing entity, to use this at no cost, why are we charging the library to have programs there for the children because of the space problems? It seems as though what's fair for one should be fair for all. So if they're paying half, why aren't we asking the school district to pay half?
Do you want me to? I think the difference is this is a one-time event, and the library makes regular use of those meeting rooms on an ongoing basis. That would be the logic behind why we would waive it this one time rather than for the library. And the library, they already have a 50% discount in terms of the rate of using our meeting rooms. That's what I imagine to be the difference.
Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess my question is more to the hockey side, backing up the schedule so that you can accommodate letting the school have it for their activity. In backing the hockey schedules up 1 week, do we run into another organization that had it in? It's an open week for them. Thank you.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Question for you, Mayor. When we used the administrative billing for Brentwood Bound open houses, did they charge us to use those?
I don't believe so. I don't believe the school district has ever charged us to use any of their facilities, nor for that matter has the library. So my 2 cents is that I think as a matter of public policy, I would tend to agree with Alderwoman O'Neill. Sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. We do a lot of things with those publicly oriented institutions, and I wouldn't see anything wrong with having a policy that said when it comes to the library or the school board, we just don't charge. Or whatever. I mean, or charge half, but I do agree that we should be consistent.
I mean, I kind of asked for this as well, so I mean, I think maybe that's worth a further conversation, but this seems like an absolutely appropriate use of city resources. This is an invitation to all K through 5 students in 2 schools. I mean, this is a big thing, so this is, I feel, absolutely appropriate to do.
Any further discussion? All right, the motion on the table is to approve resolution number 1124. Roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt,
Yes.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes?
Alderman Plufka,
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
and Alderman Wiggy.
Yes.
All right, and I guess if it seemed to me like the board might have been interested, so if perhaps, Paula, you would work with Eric to come up with a policy that would incorporate the library as well. Maybe that was something we could run through Ways and Means or...
We expect that we will be bringing to the attention of the board an opportunity to revisit the contract that the city has with the library for accounting and finance services. I believe they pay maybe $50, and we process their payroll. We provide them HR assistance. So there's a lot that the city does for the library that we really don't charge the full rate. And if you look back at the state auditor report from, I think, 2012, 2013, that was one that they recommended that we revisit. So we have asked City Attorney O'Keefe to take a look at that agreement, so we will be bringing that back to Ways and Means shortly.
Okay, thank you. So item number, I'm going to call it G because I don't have it, but I think it's 3 under new business, is resolution number 1125. I guess I would start the discussion by asking for a motion to adopt resolution 1125.
So moved.
All right, moved by Alderman Lockmiller, seconded by Alderman Kramer. I don't remember who asked this one to come off. Was that Alderman Dimmitt? Great.
Was. Thank you, Mr.
Very good.
Chairman.
Start
Thank
with
you. members of the board, the reason I asked that this be removed is, quite frankly, I think this is a premature expenditure. This, if you all will remember, we are still in the due diligence phase of Brentwood Bound. We don't know that we're going forward with this. Until we hear back from FEMA saying that, yes, the plans or the drawings or the engineering that has been put together by Jacobs Engineering, until they sign off on that, we don't know that we're going forward. And same thing with the construction costs. What was represented to us from the very beginning of that was the cost was going to be $74 million, but that was done with approximately a 10% design in it. Now, I understand that some of that has changed as far as the Manchester Road improvement, but as far as the flood mitigation portion is concerned, we're still waiting to hear back and get some real construction numbers. Craig stood up in the September 4th meeting, I believe it was, and I asked him those questions, and what he said is that we still need to get boots on the ground. I think he said it again tonight, that until we get the boots on the ground, there could be some core samples taken of the subject property down at Deer Creek, until some more surveys can be done. We're not going to have a true construction number. And so it is possible that once that happens, that the number is going to come back. It's going to be, instead of 74 million, it could be 54 million, it could be 94 million. We don't know. But if it's too much, that could very easily kill Brentwood Bound. If we hear back from FEMA that they're not going to approve our plan, that also could kill Brentwood Bound. That's the end of story then, possibly. Now, while that sounds a little dire, the good news is that there is a process in place, and we're following that process. And the process is, in January, Jacobs Engineering is going to file this application for the conditional letter of map revision, or the CLOMAR. But Jacobs also told us at the October 15th meeting that we're not going to hear back from FEMA, as Craig said tonight, maybe 4 to 6 months. So that means summer of 2019. So hopefully by the summer of 2019, we'll know whether in fact FEMA agrees with us and they will move out of the floodplain the acres that we want moved out of the floodplain. We'll also have a better understanding of the true cost of this project of Brentwood Bound. But until that takes place, I think spending any money on any task unrelated to us performing our due diligence is fiscally irresponsible. When we passed the certificate of participation, and I do want to say, we called it a certificate of participation because that's what it was. The budget notwithstanding, where in the summary of the budget where it said in May, the Board of Aldermen approved the Brentwood Bound program, we didn't. There was never a vote taken to approve it. All we did was take a vote to approve issuing $43 million worth of bonds, because we needed a portion of that to complete our due diligence. That's where we still are. And what the board also discussed at that meeting in May was, if for some reason Brentwood Bound does not go forward, we're going to use whatever is left of that $43 million to call back the bonds. Those were the questions that we were asking our financial folks. I think we have a duty to the residents to preserve this $43 million. And the amount that needs to be spent on tasks necessary to complete our due diligence, I'm fine with that. And that's FEMA related, and that's come up with the true cost of construction. Everything else, we need to stop spending money on. And that would include Avatar, that would include PGAV. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when I bought my first house. I was single, 2 years out of law school, never done it before. Put a contract down, but I was smart enough to know to make it contingent upon financing and make it contingent upon passing the home inspection. Now, while I was waiting to hear back from the bank if I could afford it, and while I was waiting to hear back from the home inspector if it passed the inspection, I'll tell you what I didn't do. I didn't go buy furniture for the house. I didn't go buy a refrigerator for the house. And that's what Avatar is. Avatar is the furniture for something that has not yet closed. We don't know we're going through with this. I don't understand why we're spending money on these things. And honestly, I don't understand why we just don't wait. It's 6-7 months that we have to wait to hear back from FEMA. And once we get into the summer, we'll have a better handle on whether or not we're going forward on this. I hope we do. Brentwood Bound's terrific. It's a great program and concept, but I have not been shown that we are going to even go forward with this.
Alderman Plevka.
I agree with Alderman Dimmitt with regard to the fact that I think this expenditure is premature, and I also believe that task order number 5 is premature to approve at this time. And I'll add just one other reason besides the reasons that he had already given, and that is that we took on $2.6 million of debt service to finance the $40 million that we've already received. And we have it budgeted in 2019 to service that debt. And we have balanced our budget, and we've done a great job of demonstrating how we're going to no services are going to be hindered or compromised in 2019, and that's all fine and good, but that's not actually going through the process of actually paying our bills month to month for the rest of the year. And I'd like to see us at least go through one calendar year, or at least some portion of one calendar year, to show that revenue projections are on track, expenditures are on track, and we can actually finance the debt we already have. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the? Okay, the motion before. Oh, sorry, Alderman Wege.
So
Am I pulling the trigger too fast on these?
Sorry, I was trying to
Go
put
ahead.
the words together in my
That's fine. Go
pea
ahead.
brain size head. So
Right.
I completely agree about the concern about if the Clomer doesn't come in, we are kind of pushing our chips onto the table. But I disagree that if the Clomer doesn't come in, then Brentwood Bound is done. Maybe all the aspects of that, but we are committed to putting a tunnel underneath Manchester, and we are committed to hopefully put GRG in independent of what the Clomer comes back on, and we are committed to doing improvements to Manchester Road at significant cost. Right? I think. Right, this is a proposal for basically additional $20,000 for communication. We heard it tonight, right? Our residents are saying, "What's the plan? What are you doing?" I still, when Santa came over, 2 of my neighbors were saying, "What is this Brentwood Bound thing?" And talk to me all the time, and yet the message is still not getting out. I agree that we should not be spending money. I think this is a good use to communicate. Even without the flood mitigation, one of the larger projects that we're doing to improve Manchester Road, to put the tunnel in, Great Rivers Greenway, that's a significant thing. And I believe those would still proceed. We would have to decide, but if the Clomer doesn't come in, we would still proceed with those large tasks to move forward. I think this is $20,000 well spent. We continually hear feedback that our residents don't know what we're doing, don't know what's going on. I think this is a very effective way to communicate what's going on. I think it's money well spent and in the best interest of our citizens.
Alderman Leahy.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm in favor of Mr. Dimmitt and Mr. Plufka's position. I have a question for the city administrator. We've used Avatar in the past to make some videos for us, but in this year's budget, we also took out Channel 10 out of the communication arrangement. So I'm curious, if we spend $20,000 to make this video, where are we going to show it? Who's all going to see it? What evidence do we have that we spent, I think it was $9,000 on the video that we did for Brentwood Days by Avatar? Who all got to see that?
Good question, Alderman Lee. Thank you. In the memo that we presented to the board, we don't talk about Channel 993 charter, but as a discussion with the board and different committees, we did talk about using YouTube and streaming, live streaming, which meant that Channel 993 would now go dark. So as a result, we also reduced the budget line item for that. So where's the money going? It went down. Who's seeing it? We have met with the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. They have agreed to help the city promote this project. They have agreed to help the city promote other vacant property parcels that we have in the city. They send out mailings all over the country multiple times a year. They've also offered to do that, do a special mailer for the city of Brentwood, and the video would be part of what we would use to promote, what we are using to promote economic development. And that was the sell when the Communications Committee was in existence, and Lori
Coulter
came before the board and other committees. I believe Alderman Lockmiller was also on the committee at the time. So we were thinking big picture. How would we continue to promote the city, not knowing that there would be such a thing as Brentwood Bound, but we knew that in the future, we needed an opportunity to improve Brentwood Boulevard as well. So I hope that answers your question. Who will see this? It will be our residents. It's an all-out education on this project. During the holiday party last week, Monday, I walked the line talking and visiting with residents. And unbelievably, there are still people out there, even with the door-to-door door hangers, with the 2 open houses, with the ad that we took out in the Pulse. Unbelievably, even in the newsletter, there are still residents out there that do not know this project is ongoing. So in order to truly educate, which is why the value of having Unicum Arc, the value of having Avatar, how do we educate our community about this project? If we don't educate them, how do we expect them?
If we delay in the contract with Avatar and get through the construction cost and everything to the point that we at least have a better handle, this is something that would come back to us probably in the October timeframe.
So what would be the value of it then? I don't know.
Still for an education, but at least we would have, as Mr. Dimmitt pointed out, our real good facts in hands as to where we stand and where we're taking this program.
I mean, I think that's a position that you can take. I pulled up the memo that Jacobs Engineering wrote, and they say an estimate that in the past 20 years, our team has successfully processed well over 400 Clomar-Lomar applications throughout the United States. Additionally, we support floodplain permitting efforts with over 100 no-rise and similar floodplain development applications annually that do not require the Lomar process. Our team is not aware of any Clomar-Lomar application that were not ultimately approved meeting either the original requirements or overall intent of the project. The city issued a request for qualification for this project. We interviewed nationwide, very well-known engineering firms. And, you know, we had worked with CH2M all along, and then Jacobs Engineering bought them. So I'd like to think we have the brightest and the best working on this team. So I want to be as confident, and I am as confident, that this project will go forward, and that's just my position.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that we try to steer the discussion back towards the resolution, which deals with the master agreement for Avatar. So if we could try to keep it, I mean, I understand that some of this is related, but I don't want to get too far afield. So, Alderman Dimmitt?
Well, this might go in an area that you don't want to go then, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to
I'll gavel
respond
you
to
down
the,
if it
I was
does.
going to respond to the city administrator, and that is, you know, I don't think anyone's doubting the ability of Jacobs Engineering. I'm not comfortable, though, speculating as to what FEMA is going to do. And what I didn't hear in that memo is Jacobs telling you that 100% of the time that they've done this, it comes back with the Clomar. What they said is they're not aware of any time that has happened. But when I had Mr. Blond in front of me, I asked him, and what he testified to was that they could disagree with him because they disagree with the technical analysis. That's what he told us. And he also told us that they could disagree with the way that they were proposing to use levies. So it did not seem to be an exhaustive list of reasons why FEMA would disagree. My whole point being, I don't understand the rush in starting to spend all this money on things that are unrelated with completing our due diligence. No one has yet told me why we need to be spending this money now. Why don't we wait until we hear from FEMA and can actually hold that Clomar in our hands?
Anyone else? Oh, Alderwoman O'Neill.
Is it possible to table this motion until March? See what we know at that point and leave things going as it is and simply not implement this for 3 months?
You could certainly make a motion to postpone until the March meeting, if that's something you wanted to do. Tabling is actually a very specific thing to, but yeah, if you wanted to postpone action on this item until certain date in the future, that would be fine.
Would people feel comfortable with that?
Well, the easiest way is to make the motion, find out if anybody wants
Okay,
to. and then-
I'd like, can I just table the motion? I don't have to amend it.
That's, you
I'd
know,
like
these
to ta-
Roberts rules things, they work because, so she's going to make the motion.
I move to table this until March.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion? And this specific motion is to table this item until March, the first meeting in March. Yes?
Sure.
Okay, fine. Alderman Kramer.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, may we hear from our city administrator and/or from the chair about their view on the timing, the emergent nature or not of this, of the timing of this? If it's held off until March, does that provide a consequence, or are you able to live with that?
I think that there are many factors at play. Yeah, there are many factors at play. Tabling this until March will.
Postponing.
Postponing this until March will just continue to delay our effort to educate the public. So what this would do is the creation of number of 30, 40 minute or second videos, and that we would use to educate people by posting it through social media, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook. Those two avenues is what we would use to educate the public. As you all know, most of us are glued to our cell phones, so if the door hangers aren't working completely to the extent that we would like them to, then this is another avenue to educate. The board at the last meeting approved the billboard. The board at the last meeting approved the fence. We have the yard signs throughout the community, along the trails. This is just another avenue to make sure that our residents know that this project is ongoing.
Alderman Kramer's not finished. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. City Administrator Akande, am I to understand that the agreement, if the agreement were approved, this resolution were approved, the agreement put in place, the actual spending of the funds or the order, the work order going into effect would take place when? When would that happen?
That would probably happen, I don't know for certain whether they can deliver that by the end of the year. Craig, it would be next year. Yeah.
The master agreement is for $20,000. There's currently only a plan to do a couple of videos, one being a video to explain the financial side, because we've heard from various citizens at the open house, how this is going to get paid for. So we wanted one of the videos to focus on that so the citizens truly understood that. So the first payment, the first videos would be started on beginning of 19. First payment would go out probably in February of 19. And those initial videos are $10,000. So that leaves a remaining $10,000 in the master agreement for other potential tasks that may be needed to do updates along the road down, at various times throughout the year. But currently, there's only plan to spend $10,000.
And if the city were to go forward now, then this would be education, rather than later presuming that the board does vote on this, then it becomes advocacy, and we cannot use taxpayer dollars or city money for that purpose. So then that even delays it further. So now all we're trying to do is educate the public. That's what we're trying to do with this.
Your Honor, based upon what's been said, the topic of education information looms to me very large, and timing is also important, especially when it is regarding public's information and public relations. I tend to give a lot of credence to Alderman Wegge's comments, and I don't necessarily see the harm in putting this agreement into place. Based upon what's just been said, it seems to be a positive rather than a negative going forward. Thank you.
Alderman Plavka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a follow-up for our city administrator. I remember reports from Navigate and from others that projected costs of construction to begin in later 2019, and that they would extend with the money that's already been committed until 2020 or even 2021. And so I don't really understand the emergency of doing this now and educating our citizenry now, as opposed to educating them 6 months from now, or even 9 months from now, or 12 months from now. Certainly the project will be in full swing during that time.
So I believe the Brentwood Bound Task Force talked about the momentum and capitalizing on that. This would allow us to continue to do that, rather than taking a let's stop and wait approach and then pick it back up later.
But if we're gonna be in construction with money that's already been secured by our city, and we've already got a plan to use that money for construction and other purposes for the next 18 months to 24 months, how does delaying something within that time frame lose us momentum? I don't quite understand that logic.
I'm presuming that maybe the board supports this project and hopefully intends to vote on the economic development sales tax.
I'll be
and
clear,
put that on the
I
ballot.
totally support this project. My concern is timing. It's got nothing to do with the project itself.
And that would be timing for this project overall.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Leahy.
Thank you. If I can comment to Craig's question about spending maybe half the money now for the help of educating, the dilemma is the second half of this funding has yet to be addressed by this board, let alone gone to the voters for anything. So I'm hard pressed as to why I'd spend $10,000 to do a video for educating on funding to work with, since I haven't decided how best to proceed down that avenue. That waiting till March gives this board and the special meeting that the mayor wishes to hold to share the economics with us so that we could start looking at those avenues, because the borrowed money, the certificate of participations, will not cover this project 100%. We knew that going in. So again, if your reasoning is to help push the funding side and educate that, it's not defined. So how do I make a video on that, on something that's not defined?
I'm going to ask again that we try to channel our discussion to the motion that's on the table, or the motion that's pending. So the motion pending is the motion to postpone until March. So again, I'm not trying to curtail discussion. I just want to keep it focused on the thing that's right in front of us, and then we can move. Alderman Dimmitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Alderwoman O'Neill's efforts to try and appease the board where there clearly is a difference of opinion on this. But I don't understand, I don't believe we're going to have any more information by March of 2019 than we do tonight. I think we're actually going to have to wait until the summer, until we get this information that we need to have in our hands before we make any decisions. And so that's my view on the March, extending it till March.
All right, any further discussion on the motion to postpone until March? Are we ready for a vote? We are. All right, all in favor of the motion to postpone this matter until March, please raise your hand. That's 2. All not in favor of postponing this motion until March, raise your hand. That's 6. So by a vote of 2 yea and 6 nay, the motion will fail. And now we're back to the original motion, which was the adoption of Resolution 1126, if I'm not mistaken.
2-5, you're right.
2-5, I apologize.
Call for the question,
It
Your
was
Honor.
about a year ago that we started.
Can I second that? Second to call the question.
Yeah, we had a motion to call the question. So a motion to call the question requires an affirmative vote of 3/4 of the Board of Aldermen. So all in favor of calling the question, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, it's unanimous, then we'll call the question. Okay, the motion before the board is the adoption of Resolution 1125. Will you call the roll, please?
No.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes.
Alderman Leahy?
No.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill?
No.
Alderman Plufka?
No.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Weggie?
Yes.
Did I miss the count?
4-4.
Didn't.
All right, I'm voting in the affirmative. The motion will pass. All right, item number, I can't even figure out what number we're on.
Resolution 1126.
Is this for? It's 1126 is the resolution. So under new business, we got a resolution number 1126. I'd like to begin with a motion to adopt resolution 1126.
So moved, Your Honor.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Kramer, seconded by Alderman Leahy. This was Alderman Leahy, so we'll start
That
with you,
was
sir.
me, actually. Well, it
Oh,
was
sorry.
both of us, actually. I
Well,
think.
I'll let you guys arm wrestle for who goes first.
I'll yield to Mr. Dimmitt.
Ever the
Mr.
gentleman.
Dimmitt.
I'm sorry, Mr. Plufka.
That's gotta be
Alderman
Little
Dimmitt,
League.
please
It's gotta be
begin.
some kind of record. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was checking.
David,
That's
please
right.
begin.
Okay, yeah.
Perhaps it should be plummet.
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
bad.
My only objection to this has to do with section 2. I have no problem with the synopsis, the printed synopsis. I think that our technology, as is evidenced by the cameras in the room and our wonderful audio equipment and the way things are progressing, I think we are going to address the concerns raised by this resolution without having to do what I would call the archaic process of actually reading aloud the synopsis of every single bill we consider. There are people who are here that are interested. Are entitled to know what we're discussing when it's on the consent agenda, as evidenced by the 5 things that were taken off the consent agenda tonight. Those are things that are relatively mundane and frankly add to the efficiency of our meetings. I welcome it. I would like to see, if nothing else, I'm not in favor of this resolution, but I'm really specifically not in favor just of section 2 and it being mandatory that a synopsis be read aloud. At best, if we had some sort of a discretionary synopsis being read aloud, if that was the mayor or whoever's chairing the meeting would be interested, I'd be in favor of that. But as it's currently written, I'm just not in favor of this resolution. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Alderman Leahy.
Your Honor, with the permission of Alderman Kramer, I would like to be added to, as an alderman introducing this bill, if he will so agree.
Objection.
Thank you, sir.
Alderman Dimmitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also am opposed to this resolution for the reasons that Alderman Plufka stated. But additionally, my experience has been that when you ask somebody to draft something in a summary fashion, it's highly subjective. Inherent biases just find their ways into it, and we are relying heavily then upon a city employee to put together a summary without those biases. It's not intended to be that way, but that's just life. And secondly, beginning in January 1st of next year, the public is going to be provided with everything that we're provided with our meetings. So they're going to have everything. They're going to have the memos that we have, and that, in my opinion, that's what educates me on our resolutions and on our bills, much more so than any synopsis. I don't listen to the synopsis. I just think it's dangerous to put that thing together because of, again, the inherent bias. I don't think it's necessary because everyone's going to be getting the exact same information. The people out here, anybody can get online and check board docs and have access to this stuff. And finally, it's just one more thing for our city employees to have to do. And I think their hands are they're pretty busy to begin with.
Alderman Wagey.
Yeah, I also oppose this resolution. I just don't see how this increases transparency to our residents of what's going on up here. We have all these mechanisms in place to make sure we're communicating this out. I see this as just another piece of basically legislature that we're putting in place for an oddly specific reason that doesn't solve any problems. So I'm not in favor of this either.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
Okay, I want to speak for those people who aren't as adept with some of this as other people are. Having a print short synopsis in front of them, I think really helps people who want something to look at and not have to, as they say, fiddle with the mechanics. There's no reason a synopsis can't be shorter than what we've had in the past. I don't think in all the years I've been on the board, I've detected any bit of bias from any particular synopsis. Maybe I simply wasn't aware of it, but I don't recall that there was anything anybody ever mentioned. So I think in the interest of doing this, we could add the word short or agree to make it a very short synopsis, not what we've had in the past, and still provide visiting residents with something to look at.
Alderman Lockmiller.
I just ask a question from Alderman Dimmitt. When you said bias, What exactly do you mean?
Sure. Well, what I meant by that is someone who writes up a synopsis, they could not intend to have that resolution or that bill come across as though it's a bad idea, but the way that they write it, it looks like it's a bad idea. The converse is also true. They could put a spin on it to make it seem like it's a good thing to go forward with. And that's why I'm saying I just soon not even have to be concerned about that. And also, there are corrections or mistakes that are made that we have seen in the past as well. So that's what I meant by bias.
Kramer sponsored the.
Alderman Lockmiller, you'll need to turn on your microphone.
I guess I need
Oh,
to
speak into it then, yeah.
my mouth around.
They won't be able to hear you at home, I promise.
I
couldn't hear.
I
Yeah.
guess your reasonings for sponsoring bringing the bill forward, the resolution rather.
Why, thank you, Alderman Lockmiller. I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, if I could?
Sure.
There really are only two people up here who've been here for the duration of the synopsis. It was actually put in place about 15 years ago, and the city actually agreed to put it in place. It's been running informally since then. And it really is all about customer service, putting what we do formally at a Board of Aldermen meeting into layman's terms with less formal explanation, adding transparency. And, you know, if you go to what we get from the state legislature as a guide, which is the Sunshine Law language dealing with transparency, the tenets of the Sunshine Law are meant to be liberally construed, and that's to benefit the voters with more information, not less information. I'm told there's been some controversy about this, but perhaps if it has to do with shortening the meeting, you know, we're really maybe spending 2 to 3 to 4, maybe 5 or 6 minutes, Mr. Chairman, at a given meeting, going through the exercise of verbally informing those folks who are increasingly watching their meetings on television. I don't think they're at home with their study guide trying to find on their iPad, opening it up to whatever the documentation is to read what's going on. Just like the news presenters, they watch with the news every evening. They enjoy watching that. They enjoy being informed. You know, I think this is, once again, it's a customer service topic. We are familiar with a lot of these items that people who, even here this evening, they've heard a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion, but we're much more familiar with the topics than they are. This is, for the most part, their first or maybe only second time hearing about it. I appreciate anyone who's willing to entertain this motion. I think it's a positive for the residents. And once again, for about the last 14 and a half years, it has been so. Thanks for your time.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the question before the board is the adoption of Resolution 1126. Roll call, please. No.
Alderman Kramer?
Yes. Yes.
Lockmiller?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Alderman Weggie?
No. We're going to set some damn records tonight?
Choose.
You know, I got to tell you, folks, I could, you know, I could go, I see both sides of this question, there's no doubt. But at the end of the day, I err on the side of more information than less, to be perfectly honest. And that's just the way I'm going to vote, is I don't think it hurts us to put a small synopsis together and read it out so that people get an idea of what we're doing. So that's the way I'm going, but I definitely see both sides of the argument and appreciate the discussion.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Get a yes out of it.
PGAVs.
Yeah,
Task
so the
Order
next
5.
item is PJ.
You have to cast a vote.
Oh, I'm voting in the affirmative. I'm sorry. Yes, so I vote in the affirmative. So that would be a 5-4. Yeah. All right. Next item on the agenda is this is new business item number 6, I think, but it's PGAV's task order number 5. I guess I would start the discussion with a motion to approve PGAV task order number 5 as presented in the packet, or board, in the agenda.
Second.
All right, so moved by Alderman Lockmiller, seconded by Alderwoman O'Neill. Who asked this one to come out? Alderman Dimmitt, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also ask that this resolution be removed from the consent agenda for primarily the same reasons, but to build, that I did for the Avatar Master Agreement. But to Alderman Weggy's point, where he said that Avatar really goes to educating the public about the Brentwood Bound project. Now, while admittedly some of that education is going to include the flood mitigation, which we don't know it's going to happen, it also would include educating them on the GRG connector as well as educating them on the Manchester Road improvements. What we have in front of us, I don't see any connection at all to either of those two. It sure seems to me this is solely about flood mitigation. It talks about, because without us mitigating that area, without FEMA saying we're going to go ahead and approve or we're going to remove those acres out of the floodplain, I don't know why we need to worry about develop the build-out square footage or unit estimates, develop sales and market value data, et cetera, et cetera.
Alderman Plevka.
I would join that concern, and I would just point out as well that, we don't even have, and I realize what Jacobs Engineering wrote with regard to its success rate, with regard to petitioning FEMA for changes in their mapping, but they haven't even made the application yet. And they haven't even fully decided on whether or not and to what extent they're going to use levies within that design process. We are, I think, even farther ahead of ourselves with this than we were with the motion to approve the movie production. Thank you.
Alderman Leahy.
Your Honor, I'd also like to know how they can give us some of these projections if the task committee on the moratorium hasn't finished rewriting the code as to what would or would not be allowable down in this area. So we're jumping ahead a little bit too fast. You have a special meeting coming up and you're going to present numbers to us. I don't believe those numbers are the same as what this task order would try to generate, but may be somewhat overlapping.
Yeah, they're not the same, but well, I guess I'll hold off until we have the rest of the discussion. I don't want to jump into it, so. Unless we're all finished, and then I'll talk.
That's all I had, sir.
All right, so, look, it's impossible to formulate a plan to do something without investigating whether or not it's even conceptually possible, okay? So let's say, for example, we're trying to decide whether we should do flood mitigation, to Alderman Dimmitt's point, right? If we're thinking about buying the house, right, we don't want to go out and buy the furniture, right? But we have to at least have the floor plan of the house. We have to know what neighborhood it's in. We have to know what school district it's in so we could conceivably figure out if this house would even work for us, okay? And what this would do is allow somebody to say, well, okay, we're going to make some broad assumptions, right? We're going to say, hey, we're not looking at any particular business. We're just going to say, if you put in X amount of retail space and X amount of this type of space, what kind of revenue might that generate, right? And the whole idea would be to say, hey, there is a possibility, right, if you do flood mitigation and if it were to work out the way the Clomer says, then you might be able to expect this amount of return, right? So I would argue that this is not so much, I forget what the term was used, but, something that we shouldn't even due diligence. This is as much due diligence as anything, right? It absolutely part of due diligence. It's part of formulating the entire concept of what's going on. And to further on that point, I respectfully disagree with Alderman Dimmitt. We are buying the basement parcel by parcel right this instant. And we've been working on it for 9 months. So we already own quite a bit of the basement. So if you don't want to build a house, that's fine, but you own a basement already.
Mr. Chairman, are you done?
Yes.
Okay, well, and obviously, we know that. Going into this whole thing, we talked about that. We talked about having to spend $15 to $20 million to perform the due diligence. A good portion of that money was going to be to purchase real estate. The difference was to be used to hire the engineers to do what they need to do. This has absolutely nothing to do with flood mitigation. This does not help FEMA answer that question, whether FEMA's going to approve this, pull this out of the flood zone or not. Absolutely nothing to do with that. This has absolutely nothing to do with the overall cost of construction as well. But first and foremost, on a flow chart, the first box, is FEMA going to approve the plans from Jacob Engineering? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, move to the next box. If the answer is no, then we got to go back to the drawing board. We haven't come out of that box yet. So this is something to be done later. After we have the Clomar in our hands, no one has explained to me what the urgency is in spending this money. If we don't get the Clomar, we're going to use the money that we want to spend to PGAV to go and buy back those bonds. We have to be in a position to reduce the amount of debt, the most debt that we have, and to spend anything on something that is not necessary to complete our due diligence, I think is fiscally irresponsible. This is fiscally irresponsible, in my opinion.
When are we going to buy back those bonds?
When will we buy
Yes,
back?
when will we buy back the bonds?
Whenever we legally can do that.
And when can we legally do that?
I don't know. If we had Stiefel in attendance, we could ask them.
12 years.
Okay.
We have an advanced refunding provision for 12 years. That's your earliest opportunity.
All right.
Okay.
But Your Honor, there's no harm in not spending that money to get over this hurdle to work with. If we do that,
No.
then this money still is there.
No, understood. Right,
yeah.
But without spending this money,
You're-
then
but-
the best anybody will be able to do is guess what redevelopment might be able to bring to you if you do this project.
Correct. And that was where we started off when we looked at the project. Could we
I
develop
don't need anybody's
Manchester
help to
Road?
guess.
Now, you're going to come in with a meeting on the 19th of this month where you're going to bring numbers to us to say this is the economic benefit of where we're headed if we move forward, which is somewhat in parallel to what this task order 5 is going to try to accomplish. I'd like the committee that's doing the code to finish up what we do or do not allow down in this new area and then come back with harder numbers.
The data I'm looking for is not related to any particular code. Alderman Leahy, that's what I'm trying to tell you. The information I'm looking for is to say, look, we know that retail space is worth approximately this amount of, Class A retail space is worth approximately this amount of money, and it generates approximately this amount of revenue, right?
Okay.
If we assume that there's X amount of square feet of retail space in a redevelopment area, right, then what would that look like if we
Dollars
were
to
to
the
move
city.
forward? Yeah. And in order to intelligently answer that question, you absolutely have to have data. And with all due respect, Alderman Plufka and Alderman Dimmitt, that data is absolutely essential to your due diligence because you don't have any idea what the return on this investment might be until you get that data. And I'm sorry, there's just, it'll be a guess right out of the rear end of somebody, other than me.
Your Honor, is it your intention to use what might be results of this work order 5 as an education arrangement for potentially looking at a sales tax for the citizens or
Plan to
something?
share it with anybody and everybody who wants to know what a redeveloped area around Manchester Road might look like in terms of tax revenue to the school district and to the city. That's it. And I will very carefully lay out all the assumptions that have been made in order to produce that number. It's just information, folks. And if you don't want it, that's fine. I would prefer to have more information than less. Alderman Dimmitt.
Well, the suggestion that we don't want information, that's somewhat disingenuous. That's not it at all. All we're saying, we're talking about timing on this. I want all the information in the world. I just don't want to be spending money prematurely, which I believe that's what we're doing with this resolution in front of us. So don't paint me as though I don't want information. Of course I want information. But I think we have to be responsible with how we're spending this $43 million when we don't know we're going through with this.
Alderman Lockmiller.
I'm in favor of this because my worry has always been, once we construct all this infrastructure, how are we going to maintain it? And having this information in front of me about what this area might generate in sales tax helps me feel more comfortable with the decision-making here. So that's what I'm hoping to gain from this task order number 5.
Alderman Wiggy.
I guess, I'm in favor of this too. The argument about timing resonates, and I guess one additional value of this, if the Clomer doesn't come in, I think we would want to know what the opportunity for Manchester is and why we would want to go the Plan B or work really, really hard to find a Plan B, right? We've got this blighted area in our town, and I guess we haven't really been able to articulate what could be done there, and I guess that would be one value here. So I believe, again, $10,000 to get more information. I am also a data person. Again, independent of timing, I think it would be worth it to help articulate to our residents. So I am in favor of this, but I completely understand your argument about the timing on this.
Okay, any further
One more.
discussion? Alderwoman O'Neill.
All right. I understand that also, but we kind of glossed over at some point how much revenue is going to be lost with the present-day businesses that are there that are no longer going to be able to be operated while all of this goes through. So since we're going to lose something, it would be nice to have information on what we might gain and make sure it's cost-effective. So I'd like to see this just because of that.
I think the mayor's going to pull up because we do have an analysis of how much tax revenue we're losing.
I actually have that analysis has been completed only this week by yours truly, and I will be happy to share.
You read my mind.
Thank you. I will be more than happy to pull this up if I can find it. And then I can press this, I disabled my magic button device, but I'm sure I can find a way to make it work again. Let's see.
While you're looking for that, can I?
Yes.
Okay, we recognize?
Sure, yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
thank you.
Alderman Plouffe.
So just to build on Alderman Dimmon's point, keep in mind that what we're talking about voting on right now is the economic redevelopment when we don't know what properties are going to be involved. We don't know how many will remain. We don't know how many are being pulled out of the floodplain. We don't even have an application to FEMA from Jacobs at this point, and we don't have the understanding of the specific architecture. They came to us the last time they spoke before us. They said they were still pretty sure they were going to use a certain system regarding levees and other barriers, but they weren't fully convinced that they were going to do that. They wanted to run some more tests to be sure that they thought that this would match up with what FEMA was going to come back with, all getting to what the Clomer was going to say. But keep in mind that what we're talking about in this letter is we're asking them to do a survey and an analysis of what economic redevelopment might mean to an area we don't really know the boundaries of. We don't really know how many properties are going to be involved in it, and we don't know how big in terms of acreage we're dealing with. And so they're going to be guessing at those figures because they don't even have an application to go from by Jacobs to FEMA.
Alderman Plouffe, I have to point out that's. I mean, we're approaching the 30% design milestone in this project, and they are no longer just guessing at where the properties are that are, I mean, that's long past.
Has Jacobs submitted the application to FEMA?
No, but they will submit it next month.
Right.
And they are long past the place where they're just guessing where the properties are that we're going to need. And you've seen maps of the ones that we're going to acquire and the one, I mean, we're well past that point.
So can you tell me, with regard to each individual parcel that we're talking about, the percentage of that parcel that's going to be used and going to be
Yeah, pretty much.
park and not park, and redevelopment and not redevelopment, based on some analysis of what they're going and how they're going to
Here's every single
reconfigure?
parcel that's in the project area. Do you really want to go through this all right now?
I know every single parcel that's in the project area. What I don't know are the parcels that are going to remain for redevelopment. and
Yeah,
what
that's
portions
I'm
of
about to
those-
show you right now.
And what portions of those parcels are going to be remain for redevelopment?
Well, no, not every portion of every parcel.
Okay, well, that's my point, is that within 30 days, we're going to know that because it's going to be contained within the application.
I
tell-
don't know that I don't know. I've never done a Clomer application, so I don't know that.
So you're suggesting that we're not going to have any more specific information about the actual boundaries of what is being reclaimed and what
I
is...
suspect the application to redraw the flood map will have on it where the flood line boundary is, yes.
With more specificity than what we know right now.
I suspect yes.
Then my comment, I mean, I'd stand by what I said. I don't understand why we're...
What I'm telling
pushing
you is I don't
headlong into
expect
this
that it's
right
going
now.
to change in 30 days. They wouldn't be at a 30% confidence interval if it were going to change.
And if you were building my house, Mr. Mayor, I would have all the confidence in the world that you were doing it correctly. But this is not my money, and this is not your money. This is the city of Brentwood's money, and I think we owe them to trust the process and wait for that application to be submitted before we go ahead with something like that.
Well, I think you're overly cautious, but that's just my opinion.
Respectfully, thank you.
All right, so there was somebody that wanted to see this, and here it is.
Is this economic loss?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying. Hold on. Give me a sec. Give me a sec to get to the view here, and I can... Oh, now it's going to try to update all that stuff in the background. That's big. There you go. So if, whoa, sorry, let me go down there. And there. Take it down just a bit more. I'm sorry?
Is this currently what the area is, or is this projected?
Oh, I'm about to explain it. Sit tight. All right, so this is the yellow that you see is all of the information for all of the properties that are contained within the Brentwood Bound project area. Okay? This is the total amount of sales tax that is generated by all of the businesses that are contained in the yellow boundary. Yes? Everybody understand? This is the property tax that's paid by all of the property, right, to the city, right? And this is the breakdown of where that property tax goes. This is the personal property tax that's paid by all of those businesses. And this is the breakdown of where that personal property tax goes. This is the gross receipt tax that they pay to the city. That goes to the general fund. And here's the total amount of sales of all taxes that are generated by the Brentwood Bound project area. Okay? It accounts for, sorry, I have to look at my screen to do this, but it accounts for 3.28% of the entire tax revenue of the city of Brentwood, the entire project area. Okay? Now, if you look at the redevelopment area, that is assumed, I will say to both Alderman Dimmitt and Alderman Plufka, it is assumed that at some point there will be a strip of area south of Manchester Road that will be capable of being redeveloped, right? We identified it at the open house, right, quite clearly, right? And it's assumed that that will be made available for redevelopment. In that area, the sales tax is $341,000. The real property tax is $54,000. Personal property tax is $2,000. Gross receipts is $45,000. You see that that accounts for $443,000, or approximately 2.44% of the city's total revenue. Okay? If you look at the properties that are being acquired for flood control, and this is more than the amount of property that's needed, we've assumed a total take. Wherever we think there's a portion of the property we're gonna do, we'd have assumed a total take, all right? $49,000 in sales tax, $27,000 in real property tax, $8,000 in personal property tax, $31,000 in gross receipts, for a total of $117,000, or 0.64% of the city's total tax revenue. That's what's going to be lost for sure as a result of this project, okay? This is what the school district will suffer as a result of this project. And I didn't break it out into general fund and all that because the school district just gets it in a lump sum. So I just said, here's what it is for redevelopment, right? Here's what it is for total Brentwood project area. Here's what it is for redevelopment area. And here you see the school district is taking almost twice the hit that we are in terms of revenue from the acquired properties. Why is that? Because they're mostly property taxes. Yeah, they're mostly commercial. They generate. So that is the amount of tax that will be lost, right? That's the amount of tax that's at risk as a result of this project. Now, I don't mind telling you that the area that's lost is the 0.64%. Does that concern me? Sure it does, right? I don't want to give up 4.64% of my revenue, right? But if it means the opportunity to potentially take this 2.4% and turn it into something larger, then I'm listening. Oh, and by the way, get rid of all the public problems associated with water and flooding and all the other stuff. So that's the numbers. Alderwoman O'Neill, I think I'm answering your question. Those are the numbers.
Definitely. Thank you.
So, look, I have information. I'm prepared to talk about this in more detail. I've actually sent out a meeting request, and we're going to talk about it in some more detail. This is the tip of that iceberg, and I don't want to get into it all tonight after 2.5 hours of straight meeting. But if anybody's interested, I'm happy to discuss it. Okay, is it time for a vote on something?
Yes.
Yeah, good. I'm for that.
PGAV.
All right, so the motion before the board is the approval of PGAV work order number 5. Is there any further discussion? We're ready for a vote. Roll call, please.
Alderman Dimmitt,
No.
Alderman Kramer,
Yes.
Alderman Leahy,
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill,
Yes.
Alderman Plufka,
No.
Alderwoman Sims,
Yes.
Alderman Weggie.
Yes.
Okay, by a vote of 6-2, that one passes. Is there one more thing that we pulled off of the? No, we're done with that. All right, good.
Citizen comments.
All right, citizens' comments. That is item number 13, if I'm not mistaken, one of my favorites. Anyone would care to come forward and address the Board of Aldermen on the subject of your choosing, please do so.
Scott Brent, I live at 9319 Pine Avenue. What I've just listened to here is, I'm still trying to take it all in. Sounds to me like the board is, all we've asked to do is pump the brakes on something. I work in an industry where I have 2 scenarios where I have to react fast. Other than that, you pump the brakes, you stop, you take the information, you soak it in. Then you can assess what's going on. All Alderman Dimmitt and Alderman Plufka asked to do was stop spending money for the moment until we know what we're doing. To me, it seems like once we know what our project is, we can get more data, more clarity for what we want to do at a cheaper cost, because now we're not branching off in scenario A, scenario B, scenario C, D, till the end of time. It's like paying for your kid to go to college when they're 15 years old to a specific school and you don't even know if they're gonna go or can get in. That's all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to come forward and address the Board of Aldermen?
Greg Schultz, I live on 8727 Covington Court. And this is the first meeting that I've come to. And boy, am I ashamed. However, I'll put that aside. I had some other things to say that I won't say, but I don't know how many of you have dealt with FEMA. When I was in the corporate world, I had to deal with them quite a bit. in Memphis, Tennessee, on a piece of property. And it took us forever to finally get an approval. After they approved it, 2 years later, they disapproved it and took it back. Now, you don't even know whether you're going to be approved of the property down there. That should be your first point that you need to do. I understand it, but I don't know who the agency is that you're using. I don't have any idea. Again, like I said, I'm new to this. However, unless they can guarantee you right off the bat that, hey, this is what you're going to get, then you got to back up, as Scott said, put the brakes on for a few minutes. Now, I'm saying because, hey, I'm a retired guy, and I don't want you spending my money in wrong places. And it's happened. And I just got some information that I was going to discuss tonight, but I'll leave that for another time. But thank you for your time. But think about it. All right.
Thank you. Anyone else care to come forward and address the Board of Aldermen? Okay, any of the aldermen care to respond? Oh, seeing none, we'll move along.
Motion to adjourn?
Second, Your Honor.
I heard a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
I was going to make an observation.
Oh, well,
Whatever.
we always have time for an observation.
Some of you may know, attending these meetings is what I do for a living. So I'm at town council meetings 4 nights a week, 4 weeks a month, and have been for many years. I wanted to congratulate you. This was an outstanding analysis of significant public policy issues, never once devolved into ad hominem arguments or comments. You stayed on the merits of the policy. I got to tell you something. There's a lot of public bodies are unable to do what you all did tonight. And however, whatever your view of the subjects you debated, your process was outstanding, and you should be proud of it.
Well, thank you.
Mr. O'Keefe.
Thank you, sir. Wow. I already banged my gavel. I'll do it again. We're out.
Can we get that in a minute?
It's absolutely.
My Lord, look, I swear.